Okay, so Be'ezras Hashem, tonight we are continuing with our series of shirim on the teachings of the Goyin and the Tzaddik Rav Yitzchak Maya Morgenstern Shlita, and we are up to our 90th shir of entering the Sea of Wisdom, 90 corresponding to the Ois Tzadi, which is the Or of the Tzaddik. Be'ezras Hashem, we should be zeicha to go weiter on Me'av Esrim, not Me'av Esrim shirim, Me'av Esrim Shana. Be'ezras Hashem, there's an incredible nakuda that was brought out in this week's Gilyon. And to some, it may have appeared to be a joke almost, but ultimately, in truth, it speaks to what I understand as being a fundamentally significant description of what the Torah's Chacham Beis Medrash is about, what the Or of the Rebbe is about, and ultimately an insight as to how we can grapple with our role at this stage in history in Ikvas of the Mashiach, where we struggle simultaneously with two sides of what appears to be an opposite coin. On the one hand, we are fully aware of the struggle. We are fully aware of the difficulties. We are fully aware of the inundation that we experience and that we're exposed to, coming from all arenas that assault the mind, the heart, the body, provoking us, pushing us away from the sense of comfort and unity and faith and trust and all of the things that are good. Yet on the other hand, we're also fully aware of the fundamental power that our generation represents, in the sense that, as it's brought down from our tzaddikim, from Rav Tzadok HaKohen, from Rav Chaim Vital, the Rabbi Rashab, v'chulei, that our generation, specifically because of the intense pain, specifically because of the intense predisposition towards difficulty, it's specifically our generation that has the capacity of revealing the lights of Mashiach. It's specifically our generation that when we engage in even the slightest gesture of Avodas Hashem, we are doing far more than what previous generations were ever capable of doing. This paradox, obviously, that on the one hand, feeling like we're the lowest of generations, yet on the other hand, feeling that the most capable of generations, it creates a certain dilemma within the spirit. It creates a certain discrepancy where on the one hand, we feel that we are infinitely capable, yet on the other hand, we feel that we are infinitely liable to the struggles that we go through. And in asking about an interesting hanhaga, a specific hanhaga that is allowed at certain moments in the Beis Medrash, in particular on Purim, and perhaps even other than Purim, what you find in Beis Medrash Torah's Chacham is that there is an accessibility given to davening with a siddur of kavanos. Now, as we will discuss in future shirim, and as the Rebbe has discussed every particular detail imaginable associated with this sugya in various writings, nevertheless, we'll keep it limited on the particular notion that the Arizal had his Shar HaKavanos, had Pri Eitz Chaim, which was the expression of how to apply Eitz Chaim Kadisha, how to take the ideas of Kabbalah and apply them to the process of Tefillah, apply them to the process of engagement. And what the Rashash did, what Rav Shalom Sharabi did, is he took the Arizal seriously enough that he expanded upon all of the meditative devices, all of the numerical values associated with Shemos, and spelled them all out and created a siddur, the Siddur HaRashash, that is this powerful tool that enables a person to fully integrate themselves and experience the process of tefillah through the kavanos of the Arizal. Now, in addition to the Mikubalim and the Mechavnim, which populate the Beis Medrash in a way that these would be Roshei Bate Medrashim Acherim, there are the unique individuals, Mesaridim Hashem Asher Hashem Koira, that are capable of davening with kavanos, and there are many. But there are also individuals that you see who are younger and who are engaged in looking at the Siddur HaRashash to the degree that it is apparent that they're not engaged in the kavanos of the Rashash necessarily. They're not engaged in the process of a deep understanding of the system of the Arizal and the quantification of it that comes along with, or the quantumization of it, rather, that comes along with the introductions and the interventions of the Rashash and the Torah's Chacham. And it seems that those Siddurim populate the Beis Medrash, even when the person davening from the Siddur is not someone who is theoretically engaged in Kavanas HaTfilah. And the question is why? What is the value of a person looking at a Siddur with the Shemos of HaKadosh Baruch Hu written out in large letters with different permutations, things that would typically be associated with the upper echelons of spiritual experience are seen to be utilized by those who don't necessarily understand the depths of it. And according to the naked eye or an external perspective, it seems to not only not be kavod to the process of the Siddur HaRashash, but it seems to be a bizoi, God forbid. It seems to be a cheapening of the Siddur and a cheapening of the notion of what it means to daven with a Siddur. And somebody asked the Rebbe, and people have asked the Rebbe in the past, what is it specifically that rests behind the allowance of those who are not adept at the kavanos to daven from a Siddur HaRashash? Is it not going to appear as yuhara? Is it not arrogant? Is it not in implication that I am worthy of certain elements that I am not truly worthy of? And so what the Rebbe is going to address is there's going to ultimately be three answers that the Rebbe offers. Two are new, and one is a past response that was given to this very quandary. And I believe that these three answers provide us with a deep insight into what it means to be someone who is makushu to the Torah of this tzaddik. The Rebbe is going to refer to his base medrash and the people who populate his base medrash as the individuals where this psak or this allowance applies. And my humble understanding is that anybody who is learning from the waters of the Rebbe, anyone who is drinking from the Svarim, from the Torah that's given over in the name of the Rebbe or through the Rebbe or based on the writings of the Rebbe, is someone who has the capacity of understanding that the words of the tzaddikim, the words of this tzaddik, the tzaddik emes, speak directly to us. It is imperative for us to be of the awareness that if the words of the tzaddikim speak to the highest place imaginable, if it speaks to the talmidim ha'amitim of the Rebbe, it also speaks to the lowest place imaginable. It also speaks to individuals like myself. It also speaks to those of us who sit at the edge of the table, at the very farthest point where we have no shaykhs to the tzaddik, but nevertheless we continue to try and remain related to the or of the tzaddik. Sha'al echad min talmidim. One of the talmidim asks, Ma ha'heter lahaskim shetzirim yispalel b'siddur im kavanas rashash. What exactly is the allowance given for young children to be davening from the siddur with the kavanas of the rashash? Harei yadua, it's already known, shahachida ve'od tzadikim. Asruzos, the Chida, who was one of the Talmidim, one of the most significant Talmidim of the Rashash, they came along and they assered davening from the Siddur HaRashash if you were of a younger age. Rak l'misha baki mamish b'chol Kabbalah. Only somebody who has a full control over the system of Kabbalah should theoretically have access to the Siddur. Ubadaris hakoidmim. In the earlier generations, hikpidu hatzadikim al kach b'harbe. There was a deep focus upon this interdiction, this prohibition against utilizing a Siddur with the Kavanas Rashash if you weren't worthy of it. And how are we able to allow this? And this is the earlier response. And the Rebbe responded quickly. And it's expressed elsewhere as well. That because nowadays we live in a time where the battle against the husks of impurity, or the concealing elements that block the insight of godliness in our lives, because those are operating at such a speedy and intense level, as I nitain mishamayim heter lehishtamesh im hayahalom shel keser hamelech letachno leshavchu al ben hamelech achoyle refuasu kamashal balatanya hayedu al limud pnimius v'rasei Torah. So the Rebbe utilizes a mashal that was given over by the Balatanya. It's also a mashal that's brought down in the name of Rav Tzvi Zidichov, that he responded to the Ketzois HaChoishen, that the reason that Hasidus allows for the utilization of such fundamental secrets, the Razin Derazin, the things that a generation before would have been completely off limits for the common individual to understand, the reason that we are allowing this is because this is the medicine necessary, something we've spoken about numerous times, that in line with the urgency that one feels towards Pnimius HaTorah in order to heal their broken soul, so too is going to be their relationship with Pnimius HaTorah. That if I learn Pnimius HaTorah as if it's the only thing that's going to answer the questions of my sick soul, then Pnimius HaTorah becomes something that I am worthy of learning. And so too in this matzav where the generation is so sick, they come to the king and they say, your son is so sick, what are we going to do? The only medicine available is that hidden jewel hidden within the crown of the king. And we need to grind it down and we need to pour it upon the Ben Melech. And Rabbi Nachman has this mashal as well, in the hopes that perhaps it will provide them with some element of refuah, la'avodas Hashem. And because people are so sick, we also now have the ability to utilize the medicine necessary. La'adam sheyodea shemevilo l'histalklus b'shemas hakadoshim devekus b'Hashem, that for a person who understands that if I'm looking at the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if I'm looking at Yud K Vav K, if I'm looking at Aleph K Yud Hey, if I'm looking at all of these shemos and I'm purifying my eyes, and I feel that this is going to bring me a little bit of closeness and dvekas to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as the Ramak says that the looking at the holy names themselves is what negates the klipa. And furthermore, if we take the moment to say, in spite of the fact that I have no idea what this siddur is saying, in spite of the fact that this is a foreign language to me, nevertheless, I am connecting and attaching myself to the tzaddikim who do understand this. There is a major precedent within the Achronim that we can allow ourselves to be yoitze with the kavanos of those who understand the kavanos, and that when we're makayim our mitzvah, we're learning Torah, we're engaged in avodas Hashem, that we have to be machavein, if that's what we choose to do, al dasat tzaddikim hamitim, befrat Rabbi Nachman ben Fega, as well as the tzaddikim hamitim in our generation, that our kavanos should be in line with those who truly understand the kavanos. As long as a person is not tricking themselves or deluding themselves, and a person continues to hold on to the truth of all truths within their heart, that a person never comes to feel that in truth I am worthy of this simply because I'm utilizing it. But rather I'm utilizing it as a weapon in the battle against the Yetzer Hara, to connect myself to the tzaddikim, so that they're the ones who know how to be machavin karoi. They're the shliach tzibur, as Rabbi Nachman says, and I'm machavin my das to be makusher to the das of the shliach tzibur, and I use this as a tool to help me connect to the shliach tzibur, who's also davening from Siddur HaRashash, and at that point, all of the hearts are yearning after Rebbeinu Shleilim, but tzaddikim yelchubam, and the tzaddikim are going to be the ones who are carrying out the actual knowledge of the kavanah. So that was the first reason the Rebbe gave for the reason that it's okay for young children or young individuals to be looking at the Siddur in spite of the fact that they theoretically don't know what's going on. The Ata Hoisif Yoiter, now the Rebbe added something further. Shakivan Shayetzahar Misnaig Ata Ba'ofen Shel Shigayon V'Hafkeres Gemura, that because nowadays the Yetzer Hara is operating in such a way of madness and complete and utter abandonment of all rules and regulations in the aspect of the Shar Nun of Tumah, which operates L'malamitam V'das, that operates in a way above any planning or prevention that we can engage in. Harizelu Umaseh so too, if the Yetzer Hara is going to be acting like a crazy person, then we have to act like a crazy person. And to act like a crazy person, to act like somebody who's lost their mind, who is allowing themselves to descend down into the abysmal depths of insanity for the sake of the Rebbeinu Shleilim, as Rabbi Nachman says, that it's impossible to serve the Rebbeinu Shleilim ela ayidei milei d'shtusa, as the Rebbe Rashab describes in Kuntras Mayan Beis Hashem, that sometimes we have to utilize shtus de kedusha connected the shtus of the Yetzer Hara. If the Yetzer Hara and klipa in our generation has completely lost its mind and it's completely out of control, we also have to fight it with an out of control nature of holiness, the aspect of oiris de tohu bekelim de tikkun, the notion of chaotic lights within vessels of rectification. And we have to fight shigayon with shigayon, kampf meshuga with meshuga. We have to fight shigayon with shigayon. We have to fight craziness with craziness itself, and we have to throw ourselves into a relationship with the Rebbeinu Shleilim l'malam b'tam v'das. Just like the Vilna Gaon points out that in this generation, b'zman hazeh ein isur mechzik yura hayus sitra achra gamkin mishtameshes b'chafitzas gedola. As the Gra himself already said in his generation, that in our generation we don't have to worry so much about mechzik yura. It's going to appear that I'm trying to gain a name or trying to prove something about myself, because the Yetzer Hara itself is operating in such a form of chutzpah yiska, of an absolute abandonment of any shame, and it's attacking us on every level and every moment. So too we have to utilize every aspect of ourselves ad kidei kach, that we're meshugam mamish. We have to be meshugam mamish for anything that's going to give us a chelek or a te'ima of his kashrus to the Rebbeinu Shleilim. Makam acher amar, and elsewhere we had said shakoil elu haheterim. All of these allowances, heim beikar lebeis medrash lidan, specifically for beis medrash Teres Chacham, shenivna b'miyuchad l'sayeh l'neshamos shetzrichos l'derech zeh, and that in truth the entire purpose of the Beis Medrash of Taras Chacham are for the neshamos who are in need of this type of mahalach, of needing the diamond of the crown of the king to be crushed up in order for us to be fed the medicine necessary to awaken our slumbering souls that are stuck in an unconscious stupor, or to enable us to access that shigayon de kedusha, to be like a crazy person for the Rebbeinu Shlalem, like the Nevi'im, who operate in a state of shigayon and shtus de kedusha. And that's specifically why we allow ourselves to engage in certain elements of hanhaga and avodas Hashem, of learning things that maybe we really don't have an authentic right to learn, but nevertheless we know that we can't survive without learning these things. All of these things are part and parcel of what it means to be someone who's makusher to the Beis Medrash of Taras Chacham. All of this is what it means to be someone who's makusher to the or ha'oires of the tzaddik emes, who's megala a Torah chadasha me'isi titze, a Torah of atika stima, a Torah of la'asad lavo, that's so deep and so powerful that it has the ability to elevate and illuminate even those of us who find ourselves in the lowest place imaginable, to reveal, like the Or of Adam Kadmon, that not only is the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu found above by the Mechavnim Ha'amitim, but it's also found down below by the Meshugayim Mamish, who need these weapons in order to try and scare away the Yetzer Hara. And with that koyach, with that rishus given by the tzaddik, with that rishus offered to us of a ir miklat mamish, the Beis Medrash is an ir miklat, Taras Chacham is an ir miklat. Each and every person who's there is running from something and running towards something and finding their own form of connectivity to that shigayon de kedusha, to that capacity to connect to the Rebbeinu Shlalem l'mala mitam v'das, above and beyond any rationalizations, because in accordance with the rationalizations we would never have the chutzpah nearly strong enough to open up these books. But because we're acting like meshugayim and we're allowing ourselves to dafka act like meshugayim l'mala mitam v'das, to know that I'm not deserving of what I'm doing, but to nevertheless continue to do it, and to ignore the naysaying sounds in my mind, and to ignore the doubts and all of the things that pull me away from this avodah de kedusha, and to throw myself into the shtus de kedusha, into the mile de shtusa, into the secret of what it means to be like a ben who decides to act like an eved, like Rabbi Nachman says. The ben, the son of the king, is the one who has a deep understanding, the intellectual awareness of what the king is all about. The eved has no idea what the king is about. He just knows what he has to do. There's a chiddush that Rabbi Nachman provides in the Rebbe Rashab's entire Sefer Samach Vav, as the Rebbe has said, is built upon this notion, and so too it seems that this is what the Rebbe is referring to, that there's a darga of a ben that acts like an eved, someone who maybe has some insight into themselves, but nevertheless chooses to serve God, l'mala mitam v'das, with shigayon mamish, to be a crazy person for the Rebbeinu Shlalem, to scream in the streets, like Rabbi Nassan after meeting with Rabbi Nachman, when he heard a specific Torah, he was ready to run in the streets at the top of his lungs, screaming this Torah out, until Rabbi Nachman told him not to. But that shigayon de kedusha, that impulse to scream it out, was very real. We find this explicitly written in the writings of Rav Yitzchak Isaac Hamler, that after he had Yechidus with the Alter Rebbe, he wanted to run into the streets and scream at the top of his lungs this truth that he had heard, but for some hidden reason that he no longer even remembered, he decided not to. But we see that there's an impulse, a shigayon de kedusha, to stand in the streets and scream out Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, to scream out Rashash and Taras Chacham, to scream out Malchus Gnuz of Aradla, Atik and Arich, and all of the Lashonos that we don't have any saga of, other than the fact that we're using them because there's the only weapon available to us. And Be'ezras Hashem, B'schus the Tzaddik Emes, and B'schus the Takanos, and the openness that his Beis Medrash provides for those of us who are in need of shigayon de kedusha, to fight the shigayon de klipa, to have the ability to extricate ourselves and untether ourselves ever so slightly out of the stuckness, and to move ourselves closer and closer to the Rebbeinu Shlalem, ad kedei kach, that we can be zeicha to the secret of ayin ba'ayun yiru b'shuv Hashem Tzion, that we see eye to eye. We no longer need to receive from teachers. We can be makusher to the Rebbeinu Shlalem, each and every one of us, in our own way, through the tzaddik emes. And be'ezras Hashem, we should be zeicha to geula b'schus the shigayon mamish, b'schus, that going against what we feel is something that we shouldn't do in kedusha, and pushing ourselves further, that should be the schus, the mesiras nefesh of accessing the mala mitam v'das, to draw down Mashiach Tzidkenu, who he himself is the mala mitam v'das as well. Be'ezras Hashem.